You might know this guy here, Dan Wootton, because he wrote some not such nice things about Johnny Depp in The Sun. Allegations, as a matter of fact, which turned out false, but now Dan's got allegations out against him. Not only that, Dan got axed from the Daily Mail, a lucrative contract. Not only that, Dan's been suspended by GB News, which we'll talk about here. Not only that, Dan will be investigated by the Metropolitan Police in the UK. I gotta say off the bat, I am not a financial guy, not even close, but I think we got a piece of the puzzle here. I'm sure some people watching will have a better grasp on finances than me, but being a shareholder in a company, I'm gonna assume, gives you some kind of leeway in that company. This is from the Press Gazette from November 7, 2023. It's called GB News Shareholders Nigel Farage and Dan Wootton Top Staff Awards. Few staff gain voting rights and the shareholdings are dwarfed by those of the main investors. Let's see what we got. GB News parent company All Perspectives Ltd has published the first list of its shareholders to Business Registry Companies House following its decision to issue some staff with shares. They show that Nigel Farage is the non-executive staffer with the most shares in GB News, followed by suspended presenter Dan Wootton. Now, as far as I know, we're not sure if this is a completely permanent suspension. He's suspended, but that doesn't mean they won't let him come back. We shall see. Which GB News presenters have received shares in the channel? Very few of the 28 staff awarded shares enjoy any rights over the company. Only Farage, weekday daytime presenter Michelle Dewberry, and comedy presenter Andrew Doyle have received shares with voting rights, and they collectively own less than 1% of the company's voting stock. In contrast, GB News chief executive Angelos Fragolopoulos, if I'm saying that one right, don't blame me, that's a long last name, alone owns 3.7% of the GB News voting shares and 4.8% of the total shares. The group of 28 staff given shares together just own over 3.3% of the total outstanding shares. Nonetheless, they still own a piece of the company. And nonetheless, it seems Dan is one of those people that owns a part of the company, making him a little bit more than just Dan. And they say here in the UK that the companies legally have to publish this information. They've got some more financial talk, which obviously I'm not very proficient in, so I'm not going to go deep into it. But one thing I get is that these shares are incentive for being in the company. Then they mention Lawrence Fox, and of course Dan. If you don't know, Lawrence Fox got suspended from GB News also for making jokes and some comments about Ava Evans. It appears that GB News gross shares can also be taken away, although former presenter Lawrence Fox was awarded shares by the company in the company's original 24 September filing to Companies House. The FT reported that his shares have been canceled since his exit from the channel after he made misogynist comments about Joe.co UK journalist Ava Evans. I don't know, man. I don't see how the two connect. If you've got financial shares in something, how can that be taken away from comments? Even if distasteful? That's not illegal to make comments like that. Seems like the punishments are pretty biased and pretty harsh. GB News declined to comment to Press Gazette on whether Dan Wootton, who was suspended from the channel for the same incident, retains his shares, which is also a good question. I disagree in principle on why the suspensions happened, but as I've said here before, because of what Dan did to Johnny, I'm not really going to get a big dog in the fight. I'm going to just let it roll because obviously karma. In most cases, if it was just these comments Dan was involved in, I'd be pretty heavily against it. This suspension, that kind of thing. But because it is Dan and he's done some things to people in the past, well, he might deserve what's coming. And you could see it right there. They list everyone and Dan's number one on their bullet points. So I'm not sure if that's exactly the percentage people own and how high in the ladder they are, but it seems Dan is pretty high up there. Anyway, that's what I got. Feels like a little piece of the puzzle I can't quite put together because I'm not qualified with finances and things like that. Maybe some of you watching know more than me and maybe going to get a little light bulb that I missed. If you're not subscribed here, consider it. If you don't, I'll be sad, but I'll get over it. See you next time.